Hello, this is VK3 Alpha Mike Lima, commencing the usual test transmission of miscellaneous stuff preparatory to the crossband duplex contact at 11 p.m. Melbourne time, which anybody is welcome to join. 439225 is the talk-in frequency, 439-225 on 70 centimetres, and we'll be running full crossband duplex tonight. To commence, Orson Welles and ham radio, what do they have in common? Well, in 1939, Orson Welles was a young playwright, performer on radio, had already transmitted the famous War of the Worlds broadcasts, but he was also an interviewer. And in 1939, he interviewed a Mrs Dorothy Hall of New York City. And Dorothy Hall just happened to be a radio ham. So let's listen to the interview from 1939. Orson Welles interviews amateur radio operator Dorothy Hall.
And now, Orson Welles.
Ladies and gentlemen, the last, or at least the latest chapter in the strange story of the mutiny on the Bounty, we're going to tell you tonight, before this broadcast is over. It was written only last summer, and only a few miles from this studio. Hack is a taxicab. It is also what you call a writer if you're mad at him. Quack is what Donald Duck says, and what you should never call a doctor. Ham is the most distinguished reference you can make to an amateur radio operator. But there are two kinds of hams, and smile when you call a radio actor a ham. Say ham to Mrs Dorothy Hall, however, and she'll just smile. I'd like to make this quite clear before I go on. When you say radio ham to me, it is either dramatic criticism or fighting words, depending on how big you are. But okay around Mrs. Hall, because ham is just a pleasant reminder in the queer vernacular of her own people that she has passed tests A and B of the Federal Communications Commission and belongs to the elect among amateur radio operators of the world. Mrs. Hall's kind of ham pioneered radio. Mrs. Hall's kind of ham stays up late and gets up early, eats irregularly, rescues flood victims, and talks like an E. Phillips Oppenheim spy into an H.G. Wells machine, thinking nothing of such phrases as QRM, QC, QRT, and QSL, the exact meaning of which I am not entirely certain. 88, however, means love and kisses. This I have committed to memory in several languages. 88. Y15KG is what Mrs. Hall assures me she calls His Royal Highness Crown Prince Faisal Ghassel of Iraq. I said Crown Prince Faisal Ghassel of Iraq. And there are a lot of other hams, Mrs. Hall's kind. I mean, there is W5DEW, for example, who is married, the dewdrop of Texas, and the mother of 4 children. There is Howard Hughes. There is Wilmer Allison, the tennis star. There is Dr. James Hard, the John D. Rockefeller of Mexico, who's invested $150,000 in amateur radio. This is the son of Herbert Hoover, too, and Andy Sinella, the band leader, and about 85,000 others, including Amos of our own Campbell Soups, Amos and Andy. I don't know what makes a ham. Mrs. Hall's kind, I mean. But I do know that it's very lucky for an awful lot of people that hams do exist. And 214 of those lucky people are especially lucky and especially grateful to Mrs. Hall. They are the 214 great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren and great-great-great-grandchildren of the crew of the HMS Bounty. Remember the headlines? Pitcairn Islanders face starvation, Bounty survivors isolated by typhoid rumor, Queen's woman rallies British to aid survivors, radio amateur acts to save starving inhabitants. Well, that was only last summer, and only last summer it was that the rumors of a dangerous epidemic forced the little island into a tragic quarantine that threatened to erase all life from Pitcairn. That same Pitcairn, that same paradise that Mr. Christian and the rest of them founded 150 years ago in tonight's story. What happened was this. Stories of a contagious disease on Pitcairn Island spread faster than any disease through the islands, from Panama to Tahiti, from Samoa to New Zealand, and boats, all of them, from the biggest traders to the littlest tramps, kept off. The harbor was closed. Pitcairn Islanders watched them, boats with food and, most vital, with medical supplies, sail past them almost within shouting distance and away into the sky. And so it was that slow death and death by torture faced a community in the very presence of civilization, faced a people whose ancestors had known this torment and this kind of death. And here's how another chapter was written in the saga of the Bounty. Andrew Young, descendant of midshipman Edward Young, latitude 25 minutes, 4 seconds south, longitude 130 minutes, 6 seconds west, fighting time, fighting the ebbing power of his radio transmitter, found an old friend in the ether whom he knew well and whom he had never seen 7,740 miles away. A colleague in the great good fellowship of radio hams. Found and gave the word to Mrs. Dorothy Hall, 18618 Williamson Avenue, Springfield Gardens, Queens, Long Island, New York. And here she is. Mrs. Dorothy Hall, who picked up the message and gave it to the world. I'd like you to meet Mrs. Hall.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Mrs. Hall, will you please read the entry which you made in your log on July 19th of last year?
Certainly, Mr. Wells. Here it is. 4:38 a.m. While in contact with VR6AY, he requested that I contact the British Consul that no ships had stopped for trading since May 25th, and they needed food and medical supplies.
Mrs. Hall, when did help finally reach the islanders?
Just 9 days after I received the message.
They must be tremendously grateful for what you've done for them.
Well, they're very nice people.
I think you're understating the situation, Mrs. Hall. I must tell you that since Mrs. Hall rescued Pitcairn Island, I found out from other sources she's become what amounts to its unofficial consul general, purchasing agent, advisor, and guardian angel.
Well, Mr. Wells, that's quite a title.
Tell us, Mrs. Hall, what do you think is the outlook for the islanders?
I'm afraid not so very encouraging. They are entirely cut off from regular professional medical attention, whereas they recovered from this epidemic, which incidentally has never been diagnosed. It is more than possible, particularly with the threat of cholera, that someday a ship will pull into the harbor and find no one alive.
Mrs. Hall, certainly something should be done about this. The people at Pitcairn Island need a doctor. They need someone to tell them what they've got when they're sick and someone to cure them when they've got it. They need at least the simplest medical supplies. I don't know what can be done, but maybe somebody, somewhere, who's listening to this will know the answer. Let's hope so. And now, before wishing you good night, Mrs. Hall, and thanking you for visiting us at the Campbell Playhouse, I'd like our listeners to hear what I found in your log when I visited your home the other day. It's your most recent entry regarding the island. It's just a sentence, but I think it's very eloquent. It's from the Chief Magistrate of Pitcairn Island to Mrs. Dorothy Hall. Quote, "You do what is for our good. It's okay with me." Signed, Richard Edward Christian.
And that was a broadcast from 1939. Orson Welles interviewing the ham radio operator, Mrs. Dorothy Hall. Also on the distress theme, I was lucky enough this week to find a download recorded by the BBC in about 1936 or 37. I'm not quite sure of the exact date. But it's an interview with Arthur Henry Roston. And you might not know of Roston's name unless you're a historian who has dealt with the wreck of the Titanic. Roston was the captain of the RMS Carpathia, the ship that picked up the survivors, the initial survivors of the Titanic sinking. And this is his own account, read in his own words, of that sinking as recorded in 1937 or thereabouts. Roston was born in 1869, died in 1940, so this is a voice from the distant past. Needless to say, the recording quality is not 100%, but considering this is something like 90 years ago. It's not bad.
In those days, wireless was but a recent addition to the equipment of ships at sea. We were quite proud of our installation, and we only carried one operator. This man should have finished duty at midnight, yet here he was at 12:30, and he was still listening in. But he was on the very point of retiring. He was, in fact, in the act of bending down to undo his boots when the dread call came, for in his interest he still retained the phones upon his ears. SOS Titanic calling. We have struck ice and require immediate assistance. And throwing the earphones on the table, he raced to the first officer who was on watch at the time. It is a dramatic thought that if the signal had been 2 or 3 minutes later, we wouldn't have picked it up. The news was at once brought to me. Curious how trivial things stamp themselves on the mind in moments of crisis. I can remember my door opening, the door on the other head of my bunk which communicated with the chart room. I had but recently turned in and wasn't asleep, and drowsily I said to myself, who the dickens is this cheeky beggar coming into my cabin without knocking? Then the first officer was blurting out the facts, and you may be sure I was very soon wide awake, with thoughts for nothing but doing all that was in the ship's power to render the aid called for. So incredible seemed the news that, having at once given orders to turn the ship, we were bound from New York to Gibraltar and other Mediterranean ports, while the Titanic was passing us westward bound, 60 miles to our northward. I got hold of the Marconi operator and assured myself that there could have been no mistake. Are you sure it is the Titanic that requires immediate assistance? I asked him. Yes, sir. But I had to ask again. You are absolutely certain? For remember, the wireless was not at the pitch of perfection and reliability it is today. Quite certain, he replied. All right, I said then. Tell him we are coming along as fast as we can. I went into the chart room, having obtained from the operator the Titanic's position. It was latitude 41 degrees 46 minutes north, longitude 50 degrees 14 west. I at once worked out the course and issued orders. Within a few minutes of the call, we were steaming all we knew to the rescue. The Carpathia was a 14-knot ship, but that night, for 3.5 hours, she worked up to 17 knots. One of the first things I did, naturally, was to get up the chief engineer and explain the urgency of matters, and calling out an extra watch in the engine room, every ounce of power was got from the boilers, and every particle of steam used for the engineers, turning it from all other uses, such as heating. Fortunately, it was night. Fortunately, I mean, from one aspect, all our passengers were in their bunks. Many never woke up until the drama had been played out, because one of my first instructions was that as far as possible, absolute silence should be maintained, while every man was told to instruct any passengers seen about to return to their cabins and stay there. As soon as the men heard what was wanted and why, many of them went to work without waiting to dress, good fellows. I had up the English doctor, purser, and chief steward, and to these I gave the instructions as follows. The English doctor to remain in the first-class dining room, the Italian doctor in the second-class dining room, and the Hungarian doctor in third, all to have ready supplies of stimulants, restoratives, and other necessities. Purser, with his assistant purser and chief steward, to receive the rescued at the different gangways, controlling our own stewards and assisting the Titanic passengers to the different dining rooms for accommodation and attention. They were also to get as far as possible names of survivors to be sent by wireless. The inspector, steerage stewards, and masters-at-arms to control our own steerage passengers, keep them out of the third-class dining hall, and to restrain them from going on deck. Chief steward to call all hands and have coffee ready for our men, and soup, coffee, tea, etc. for the rescued. Blankets to be placed ready near gangways, in saloons and public rooms, and others handy for the boats. All spare berths in steerage to be prepared for Titanic's third-class passengers, while our own steerage occupants were to be grouped together. To all it was enjoined that the strictest silence and discipline should be maintained, while a steward was to be stationed in each gangway to reassure our own passengers should any hear noise and inquire. Such inquirers to be asked politely but firmly to return to and remain in their own cabins. Meanwhile, we were plying on through the night, a brilliant night of stars. I had been able to go to the bridge. To me, there, Marconi operator came reporting he had picked up a message from the Titanic to the Olympic, asking the latter to have all her boats ready. The sense of tragedy was growing. But the Olympic, homeward bound, was hundreds of miles away, very much farther than we were. The Titanic had also called us. They asked how long we should be getting up. Say about 4 hours, I told the operator. We did it in 3.5 hours. And tell her we shall have all our boats in readiness and all other preparations necessary to receive the rescued. I then gave the following orders to the first officer: prepare and swing out all boats, all gangway doors to be opened, a block with line rope hooked in each gangway, a chair slung at each gangway for getting up sick and injured, pilot ladders and side ladders at gangways and over the side, cargo falls with both ends clear and bights secured along ship's side on deck for boat ropes or to help people up. Lines and gaskets to be distributed about the decks to be handy for lashings, etc. Forward derricks to be rigged and topped and steam on winches to get mails or other goods on board. Oil to be poured down lavatories both sides to quiet the sea. Canvas ash bags to be near gangways for the purpose of hauling up children or helpless. Company's rockets to be fired from 3 a.m. every quarter of an hour to reassure the Titanic. An hour before, the Marconi operator had brought me a message from the Titanic that the engine room was filling. That had looked fatal. It left little doubt that she was going down. So to catch that green flare brought renewed hope. Almost at once, the second officer reported the first iceberg. It lay 2 points on the port bow, and it was the one whose presence was betrayed by the star beam. More and more now were we all keyed up. Icebergs loomed up and fell astern. We never slackened, though sometimes we altered course suddenly to avoid them. It was an anxious time, with the Titanic's fateful experience very close in our minds. There were 700 souls on the Carpathia. These lives, as well as the survivors of the Titanic herself, depended on a sudden turn of the wheel. As soon as there was a chance that we were in view, we started sending up rockets at intervals of about a quarter of an hour, and when still nearer, fired the company's Roman candles, or night signals, to let them know it was the Carpathia that was approaching. Occasionally, we caught sight of a green light. We were getting pretty near the spot. By this time, the hope that their green signals had at first bred in us was gone. There was no sign of the Titanic herself. By now, it was about 3:35 a.m., we were almost up to the position, and had the giant liner been afloat, we should have seen her. The skies were clear, the stars gleaming, with that brightness which only a keen, frosty air brings to them, and visibility was as good as it could be on a moonless night. I put the engines on the standby so that the engineers should be on the alert for instant action. At 4 o'clock I stopped the engines. We were there. As if in corroboration of that judgment, I saw a green light just ahead of us, low down. That must be a boat, I knew. And just as I was planning to come alongside, I saw a big berg immediately in front of us. The second officer reporting it at the same moment. I had meant to take the boat on the port side, which was the lee side, if anything, though there wasn't much wind or sea. But the iceberg altered the plan. It was necessary to move with the utmost expedition. I swung the ship round and so came alongside the first of the Titanic's boats on the starboard side. Devoutly thankful I was that the long race was over. Every minute had brought its risk, a risk that only keen eyes and quick decisions could meet, but with that feeling was the veritable ache which the now certain knowledge of the liner's loss brought. No sign of her, and below was the first boat containing survivors. A hail came up from her. "We have only one seaman in the boat and cannot work very well." They were a little way off our gangway. "All right," I told them, and brought the vessel right alongside. Then they started climbing aboard. Obviously they had got away in a hurry, for there were only 25 of them, whereas the capacity of the boat was fully 40. They were in charge of one officer. I asked that this officer should come to me as soon as he was on board, and to him I put the heart-rending inquiry, knowing with a terrible certainty what his answer was to be. "The Titanic has gone down?" "Yes," he said. One word that meant so much that the man's voice broke on it. "She went down at about 2:30. An hour and a half ago. Alas, that we hadn't been nearer." But there was no time for vain regress. Daylight was just setting in, and what a sight that new day gradually revealed. Everywhere were icebergs. About a third of a mile on our starboard beam was the one that a few minutes ago had faced us. Less than 100 feet off our port quarter was a growler, a broken-off lump of ice 10 to 15 feet high and 25 feet long, but stretching as far as the eye could reach were masses of them. I instructed the junior officer to go to the wheelhouse deck and count them. 25 there were, over 200 feet in height, and dozens ranging from 150 down to 50 feet. And amid the tragic splendor of them as they lay in the first shafts of the rising sun, boats of the lost ship floated. From that moment we went on picking them up, and as the rescued came aboard, their thankfulness for safety was always mingled with the sense of their loss and the chattering cold that possessed them. Many of the women had been hours in those open boats, shielded from the almost Arctic cold only by a coat hastily thrown over night clothes, telling of the urgency with which they had left the ship, suggesting to the imagination awful, long-drawn-out anxiety before the slips were loosed and the boat was on the water and away. Slowly we cruised from boat to boat, and as we neared the end of our questing, one gathered the enormity of the disaster. Altogether, we picked up 705 persons, but on the Titanic, crew and passengers numbered over 2,000, so many hundreds lost who a few hours before had been members of a gay and distinguished company halfway through the maiden voyage of one of the world's largest liners. While we slowly cruised, we held a service in the first-class dining room in memory of those who were lost and giving thanks for those who had been saved. Except for the boats beside the ship and the icebergs, the sea was strangely empty. Hardly a bit of wreckage floated, just a deck chair or two, a few lifebelts, a good deal of cork, no more flotsam than one could often see on a seashore drifted in by the tide. The ship had plunged at the last, taking everything with her. I saw only one body in the water. The intense cold made it hopeless for anyone to live long in it. It wasn't for us to remain, especially as about this time, 8 o'clock, we saw another ship coming. This was the Californian, and all the night had been lying not many miles away, hove to because of the ice. We signalled her now, asking her to continue searching as we were about to make for New York. The sea was rising, and I was anxious to get well away from that danger zone in good daylight. So we got as many of the Titanic's boats as we could on board, some remaining suspended on our davits, others hauled on the forecastle head, and proceeded. Some boats containing the survivors were alongside, people were climbing up the ship's side, others being pulled up, all wearing lifebelts, and incidentally it was the wearing of these that protected those who had been so long exposed in the boats and prevented many from dangerous chills. And then, from every quarter, boats were pulling in, making for one common objective, the Carpathia. One thing stands out in my mind about it all: the quietness. There was no noise, no hurry. All our men passengers gave up their cabins, and many of the ladies doubled up with others so as to leave their own quarters free for the distressed. Every officer, of course, yielded his accommodation. In my cabin were 3 ladies, each of whom were bereaved. Their husbands, all millionaires, had perished, and in addition 1 lady had lost a son. On the other hand, one had her son with her, whose saving had that touch of the dramatic that was in evidence time and again that night. This boy had been separated from his mother, but later on had found a place in a collapsible boat. His position was even more precarious than it sounds, for since they were helpless to propel it in any way, the boat was floating in the near vicinity of the liner and couldn't move away. It was right under her stern, and from this boy I heard a graphic account of how the Titanic upended herself and remained posed like some colossal nightmare of a fish, her tail high in the air, her nose deep in the water, until she dived finally from human sight. That collapsible was fortunate not to have been sucked down with the ship. Probably the suction was lessened by reason of the pause and then the sliding movement she took. At all events, the helpless boat merely bobbed a little dangerously and remained afloat. In a little while, a ship's boat came near. It was hailed, and the boy was taken into her, and the first person whom he saw in this rescuing boat was his own mother. Some of the first boats may have got away not filled to capacity, but later others certainly were overloaded, and there were heart-rending moments when 2 well-laden boats pulling about encountered poor fellows swimming in that ice-cold sea. In this case I am recounting, a boat's gunwale was seized forward by a swimmer. It was well before dawn. No one could see who it was, but many voices were raised protesting against him being hauled in. "We're full! We're full!" they cried. "Don't let him come in." One woman in the stern sheets, however, nursing her sorrow of a husband left behind on the sunken ship, begged for the swimmer to be taken in. The pity in her pleading prevailed, and she knew the swimmer had been saved before she sank back into the frozen coma that great tragedy engenders. Hours passed. At length dawn lit the haggard faces of those who huddled shiveringly in that boat. Only then did the woman see the features of the drenched man she had been chiefly instrumental in dragging from a death by drowning. It was her own husband. It stirred the heart to see the fortitude of the bereaved, much as it sent a glow of pride to listen to some of the tales that were gradually revealed by the survivors of the sights that had been witnessed during those last hours on the sinking ship. Tales of bravery and self-sacrifice that add lustre to the human story, shown by every class. In those hours of trial, facing death, men were equal in heroism, whether they were the humblest or such as had much of this world's possessions. And one wondered, looking into the troubled and sometimes vacant faces of those who were saved, whether they, or those left behind, had the harder part to play. But it is sure that there were many that night who, loaded with riches and honours, showed they possessed the greater gifts of self-sacrifice and self-command. A boat full of women was ready for lowering from the stricken ship. It was found to be too full, and the order was given for someone to get out. What a moment! It had to be done, for the overfull boat endangered the lives of all. A young lady, a girl really, got up to leave the boat. At once some of the others protested, pleading that she should stay. "No," she said, "you're married and have families. I'm not. It doesn't matter about me." She stepped out of the boat and returned to the deck. She went down with the ship. She gave her life that others might live. No words of mine can add to the beauty of that action. But that night it was duplicated 100 times as the boats went off, until there were no more to go, and those who remained knew all hope of safety was dissipated. In all that large assembly of differing human beings, I heard of only one instance of selfishness. A certain foreigner who had come aboard bedded himself down in one of the smoke rooms. With an acquisitive eye and disregard of others, he had obtained several blankets for his own comfort. These were draped round his portly figure, when other men found they were devoid of any. He was asked to share up, but adopted the old motto of, "What I have, I hold." There was a small council of war among a few men, but the war was soon over, and the blankets distributed. I ought to mention that the Olympic, which at the time of the disaster was some hundreds of miles to the westward, having left New York on the Saturday, had wired us suggesting she should take off the rescued, but I was against any such move. Fortunately, Mr. Ismay, the chairman of the White Star Line, was among those saved, and when I informed him, suggesting that it would be unwise to endeavour to tranship these poor people who had just been saved from the boats, he at once agreed, and told me to request the Olympic to keep out of sight. So on we went, still passing other isolated bergs from time to time. I remember that about noon we passed the Russian steamer Burma, who, bound east, made an endeavour to cut through that ice pack, but he turned out again, and I didn't blame him either. We were able to communicate to the Olympic the bare facts of the disaster, and I also sent the official message to the Cunard Company, together with as many names of the survivors as we then had. This offered the first chance we had of dispatching the news to shore. It was, owing to the short range of wireless then in operation, also the last opportunity we had of establishing communication until Wednesday afternoon. And then we learned how the world had waited in suspense for details, and especially a correct and complete list of passengers and crew who had been saved.
You've been listening to an account of the rescue of survivors of the Titanic by the Captain of RMS Carpathia, recalled at a distance of 25 years in the late 1930s during a BBC broadcast. This is VK3AML. We're now opening up on 439.225 megahertz, 70 centimetres, and I wonder who's there tonight. We're listening now.
Hello, Chris, 3HFX here.
Oh, good day, Harry.
Hi, Chris. Yes, very interesting tapes you had on tonight. Orson Welles, wow, and the other one. It reminded me, listening to that, very dramatic. But just checking, have you seen the Tony Hancock play, the radio ham?
Oh, yes. That was one of the things that got me into ham radio back in the mid-60s. I saw it when I was about 10. Back to you.
Yeah, look, there are so many times when those classic lines of is it not raining in Tokyo come to mind when people are talking about the weather on the HF bands or elsewhere.
It is not raining in Tokyo.
Yeah, right. Anyway, I'll stand on the side. I'm working here, so begin the entertainment. 3HFX out.
I don't know. You must be starved for entertainment, mate. I'll stand by for any other calls. Are you there, Peter, for example?
I can't be because apparently entertainment is required. Haha. Good evening, Harry. Good evening, Chris. VK3ACZ.
Yeah, g'day, Peter. How's your day been?
Oh, interesting. No radio to speak of, or actually I hope this isn't being recorded. I was actually on the Dumbstar net this evening and spoke a few comments with a fellow in North Carolina. Last night after we spoke, I got on the toy shop system confusion node and spoke to a Englander too. It all went very well. The coffin sheet is this morning, Chris. Very interesting. Peter Evans of the 3LO fame was discussed a little bit, including some audio sample that Laurie SJ provided. So you might have found that interesting. I certainly did. Oh, this morning got messages from the Master Blaster of DX to say that he'd been smashing 15 metres into Europe. He said short path, but I would have thought it'd be long path in our mornings, but he's got the directional antenna, so he would know. He later on said Brazil and Costa Rica too, so he's been having a lot of fun, and I enjoyed listening to the replay of last night. It was funny at the time, and it was funny again listening to the echo.
Yes, small things amuse small minds.
Well, you're guilty as charged. Okay, but it was pretty good, and we've got the promise of more. Apparently, even better done. I can't imagine it could be any better done than it already was. It was pretty good. But, pretty
it was
good.
interesting that the latency of the whole system, the transmission to North Ringwood, the transmission then to South Australia, and then the latency of the link from the web STR back to me was still within something like a quarter of a second. They've obviously improved the latency of the system.
Well, it works better sometimes than others. I think I was just appreciative. Yesterday promised to be a not too good day for me. I had my grief counselling appointment earlier, and I always come out of it thinking, well, was I any better off? A few tears lighter, but usually in a bit of a fog afterwards. But it picked me up out of the doldrums last night's session. So thank you to you and Master Blaster and Harry, and Dave, of course, who joined us as well. So interesting thing about the Titanic, Chris. I was reflecting on the fact that. And the reason why court appearances can be interesting when listening to witness testimony, one has to be careful.
Yeah.
Because you can be well-meaning but possibly mistaken. Quite a number of the people who watched the Titanic sink from the lifeboats reported that it went down in one piece. Others said that it broke up on the surface before it sunk. And of course, as we know, when Ballard found the thing in the 80s, and we know since too that it's actually in two separate pieces, some distance apart. So just an interesting, and I thoroughly enjoyed your test transmission before this, Chris. 3AML, 3ACZ.
Yeah, I was sorting through a lot of audio tracks that I'd downloaded years and years ago, including some for the Saturday night sessions I used to do, and found a lot of stuff that I'd never put to air for one reason or another. But you scour different parts of the internet that people rarely go to, like the audio downloads you can get from the Internet Archive. There is a separate site called the Internet Archive. It sort of worked as YouTube does now in the very early days of the internet, and it has actually continued in that role, more for the Gutenberg project, which is to digitize most of the books of the world, but also for audio tracks without accompanying video. There's quite a bit there. I think some millions of tracks, and the trouble is you have to search them by title, so it involves quite a bit of lateral thinking. With the Orson Welles track, for example, it was listed as Mutiny on the Bounty, which it has very little to do with, except that they were dealing with Pitcairn Island, and that lady Ham, her ability to connect the islanders with the authorities in the United States, who in turn could alert ships to go to that island. It made you realise just how isolated some parts of the world were in those pre-war days before the general application of high-tech communications, just how far out of the way you could be. Now Pitcairn Island probably has internet, television, instant link. If they want to find out, for example, about any medical procedure, they probably can get the advice via webcam and satellite if they really want to. So there are very few places in the world now that you could say are as isolated as they were in that period. Back to you, Pete.
Yes, indeed. And, but progressing on, one more comment about 160 metres too. I got a text message from Mr. Fred, that's ZAQ, to say that he'd heard himself on the Ironstone Range SDR on 160, so he's off to the races by the sounds of it.
Ah!
Yeah, all very good.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And getting back to the... I'm just looking through my notes. Any comments about Peter Evans being discussed on the Coffin Cheaters Net this morning, which was actually quite worth listening to. You know, sometimes it descends into vowels and retains that appearance for the whole net, which is fair enough. It's what they want to talk about. Each to their own. Other times somebody tries to steer it in that direction and are unsuccessful. I guess the only blemish today was the cackling hyena was on, and he was in really good form in his first over. Every single sentence had a giggle at the end of it. You know, I went down the street. I bought a pint sauce. And then I went and got back to the car.
You're doing it to me.
Well, it's what he does. And I find it really... I really find it off-putting. I'm waiting for the next giggle. Again, if it was on the end of something funny, different story. But anyhow, no. Any comments about Peter Evans? Sorry, I got distracted. Well,
I've never had contact with him personally. The person I know who had a lot of contact with him back in the mid-70s was Dave 3ASE, who was a panel operator at Broadcast House at the time. And Evans was apparently... well, as must be obvious from some of his broadcasts, a bit of an eccentric and in some ways an egomaniac, and
being politically correct, polite.
Evans apparently demanded feedback in facial expression from the panel operator who was with him, and it was starting at 5 o'clock in the morning or some ungodly hour when 3LO, I think, had just come on the air. And Dave eventually got sick of having to laugh at all the jokes in the right places, otherwise Peter Evans would get upset. I think I'm right in saying this. If Dave ever hears this, please correct the story if I got it wrong. But this is 50 years ago, so I can be excused with accuracy. But one day, Dave got sick of providing the feedback. So he got the Age, which in those days was a broadsheet, and sellotaped it to the control room window. So there was no feedback at all. And bloody Peter Evans did his block. Anyway, I know Dave has a lot of respect for Peter Evans. He's got quite a few of Peter Evans' programs on recording on his website. Apparently, he used to record him off air in the control booth. Back to you, Pete.
Yeah, I liken him sort of a gruff, controversial, opinionated figure similar to Clive Robinson. And obviously I didn't have any real exposure to Clive Robinson on
well,
radio.
except Clive Robinson, I think, hated women.
He gave that impression. But I think if you were married to Penny Cook, you'd probably...
Well,
I
think both of them are dead now, aren't they? I'm not quite sure.
Yes. She went first, if I recall.
Yeah.
But anyway, still interesting to listen to, but it was a nice bit of history. And, a couple more things. One related to last night's broadcast. I started getting text messages at 0300 this morning.
What?
Mr. QSL.
Oh.
Who was obviously up, which is funny, he slept through the Dumbstar net, apparently. Because I was last on the list, and both times I put it over to him in the hope that he'd arrived. And he hadn't. But anyway, I'm quite often awake at 0300. He isn't normally, so I hope everything's okay. But he had some funny things to say about the Echo tonight, so it's nice to know that Greg was listening. And I, about an hour ago, with nothing better to do than watch the foot brawl on delay, I had a handheld in my hand and I was listening to a repeater, the Kangaroo Ground repeater, and a station there insisted that the signals on the repeater weren't all that good because of a solar flare.
What?
I kid you not. I was having a bit of a chuckle. Anyway, yes.
Some people have very strange impressions as to what frequencies solar flares affect.
Well, especially on the night side, but he was talking as if it was middle of the day and he was on a HF.
Yes.
Anyway, not to worry. And that came after I watched a Salty Walt dumb tube video. Salty Walt's American ham operator who usually operates from a beach somewhere in Carolina or thereabouts, or Virginia, somewhere there.
Has he got one of those thick southern accents?
Not really noticeably, but nice guy. Forever trying out different antennas, and his YouTube channel's often worth half a look. But he did say that somebody had stirred him up, so he was running a quarter wave vertical on the beach. Somebody had replied in the comments that verticals are only cloud warmers. I think it was a troll myself.
Well, quite possibly.
Stirring him up.
Although I'm continually amazed at what people don't know about antenna basics. One of the things, will I say this or won't I? With regard to the latest issue of AR, I'll say it. There is an illustration on one of the pages of an end-fed antenna, and it shows the proposed operation of that end-fed antenna. And they're working it against ground, but they're working it against a ground stake. There is no radial. And I can't help but think that that is a very inefficient way of doing things. You don't get a good RF earth, particularly on HF, just by sticking a stake in the ground. There has to be some collection over a reasonable area of ground of the return currents from the earth. And if you don't recognise the importance of ground radials, you've really only got half the answer. So I was surprised to find that in the WIA journal. But admittedly, if it's a long wire and you're feeding it at a voltage point for a half wave length of wire, it's a fairly high impedance point, and you might not need all that much in the way of ground radials as you do if you feed it in a current point, as you do with a quarter wave vertical. So I don't know, but I've just felt there should be some little note under that diagram of the difference between an RF earth and a safety earth, as it were. Back to you.
Yeah, and my first reaction when hearing Salty Walt say he'd been criticised because verticals are just cloud warmers was to roll my eyes. but I subsequently pondered and then thought, nah, it'll just be somebody trolling him. Although, you can never be too sure. It might be a bit from column A and a bit from column B. Anyway, what else did you get up to today, Chris? How was your day, other than hopefully you weren't out in the WX for too long because the wind has been off the ice?
Prue, for her psychological well-being, being limited now to a walking frame, or for longer distances to a wheelchair, with all of her bone problems. She's had 3 hip replacements. No, she doesn't have 3 legs. It's just she's had 1 hip done twice. And she's had a spinal cage fitted inside the back. So she's had some really severe bone surgery, from which she is very slowly recovering. She'll never get back to what she was, but she is gradually recovering some mobility, and she's very assiduously doing hydrotherapy at Box Hill Pool, and quite often I'm sitting here in the radio shack and I'll hear her going trot, 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 trot to one end of the house, then trot, 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 trot to the other end with the trundling noise of the Zimmer frame. So she's assiduously trying to get herself as mobile as possible. But I have to make sure that we go out at least once every 1 to 2 days, because she needs that for the feeling of 2 things. One is self-determination. She can do anything you can do sitting down. Driving is no problem. It's when she gets out of the car that the problem occurs. So at this time of the year, we have to go to shopping centre, museum, art gallery, that's all on one level, that we can, push a wheelchair around, or she can push her trolley around. So we have, this sounds very boring, but it can be rather interesting. We have our shopping centre of the day, and today it was Taronga Village, near the corner of Taronga Road and Burwood Highway. Sorry, Taronga Road and Tarak Road, as it is there. And that was interesting enough. We had lunch there, a couple of cups of coffee, bit of cake, did Coles. By that I mean we didn't hold it up with guns or anything. We did our shopping. It's not a bad idea, though. That might be an interesting day. Go into Coles with a gun and see what happens. Probably a great weight would fall on you from a great height. Back to you, Pete.
Yeah, not a good career move by the sounds of that. I'm pretty sure I get what you're saying and what Prue is experiencing.
She needs to maintain her feeling of self-determination and freedom.
Yeah, because the whole COVID lockup comes back to me very clearly.
Oh, yeah. And
I remember that. Also the need to go more than 5 kilometres as well, and being too afraid to, especially when my U-Butte HF spot was about 6.5 kilometres away. But yeah, that not having that freedom was something really missed, and Prue undoubtedly benefits psychologically. Her well-being is enhanced by that, so that all sounds very good. And I had my dear 99.9, well, a bit more than that, year-old lady today.
How many weeks now? How many weeks now until...
25 days to go.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's looking likely. I mean, she's had heart failure for years, and she gets out of breath. She only walks a short distance before she has to stop for a rest. But, I'm hoping she makes it for her sake. I don't think it's all that important for her. A fellow I looked after a couple of years back, dear old Bill, we used to call him, the one who told me all about cable trams and the like. You could tell he was willing himself to get there. By hook or by crook, he was going to make it. He was so determined. Lorna's perhaps not in that category, but I thought, we're on to a good thing, because as soon as the Daniel O'Donnell CD started to play, she was right on with the words. Where I mentioned the other day that I know what sort of day we're going to have. But when it came time to take her home after the meal, she said, "Where are you taking me now?" And ooh. So, yeah, the good cognitive stance doesn't last too long, it would seem. But hey, for 99.95 or whatever it is, it's still pretty good.
Yeah, it's not
obviously
bad.
not as good as your Gwen.
Oh, Gwen
was incredibly exceptional.
Gwen was amazing, and she didn't do anything particularly to stay living that long. I quizzed her on it frequently. It just seemed to be a function of DNA. She came from a family that typically passed away between 88 and 98. And she lived to 104, and literally she was, well, not quite as good as you or I, but she was really good until the day before she died, and that's the way I want to go, even if I go in 5 years' time.
She was probably ahead of me, but yeah, and clearly she didn't do the sort of things that would have curtailed her longevity.
She liked to drink. After she died, and I shouldn't laugh, but you know, you can't regret somebody passing away at 104 quickly and painlessly.
They've done something right.
Well, yes. And her daughter is a little bit older than us. We're 72, daughter's about 77. And she's been clearing out a few things, throwing stuff my way, where I'm interested. For example, Lorna and her late husband shot home movies from the end of the war onwards, and the family thought that I was the best place for keeping the home movies, mostly 16mm. Some 9.5 pre-war of Lorna's late husband, and in due course I'll set up a 16mm projector. I have several of them in the cupboard here, with a camera, and digitise it for YouTube clips. There's some interesting stuff there of Hawthorne back 50 years ago or so. No, more than that, 75 years ago. They also threw at me something that I had an interest in when I was about 7. I don't know whether you remember these things, but there were 3D viewers. You know how you have to have the two images that are separated by the same distance as your eyes are separated. So you look at the two images through two lenses and you see everything in 3 dimensions. There was a thing called the Sawyer's Viewmaster. It was a Bakelite device, a modernised version of the old turn-of-the-century stereoscope. A little card, round, with 8 sets of very small stereo views in Kodachrome around the circle. And some of those views, as I found out, were authored by Frank Hurley, the famous Antarctic photographer originally. He used to take views all around Australia and New Zealand, and some of those views are those, but the box that was handed to me is a box of something like 120 of those cards, dating mostly from the 1950s. So the colour stuff has survived incredibly well. The box has been sealed from the air, so it's quite dust-free. And I don't know quite what to do with it, but I always found 3D photography fascinating, and certainly that facilitates a bit of the study of the better exponents of that art. Somehow it never took off, though, as television. They had 3D Blu-ray back about 2010. It never quite took off.
Well, you mentioned Kodachrome and you immediately got me reminiscing. I was inconsolable when Kodak ceased production of K64. I absolutely loved that transparency film. It just had the right colour bias for my interest. A big magenta bias, which endeared itself for sunset photography too, by the way.
Or you photograph trains that have red decals on them. They come out super red.
Oh, yes. All the red rattlers looked absolutely fantastic. And I've got a few pictures of red rattlers too. On sunny days, the red really looked red. The orange on the V-line colours for a while back then, perhaps a little bit different to what my eye saw. But the interesting thing about digital photography was that you got to choose your colour bias to a great extent too. It was really good for night photography because instead of that green tinge that you would get with neon film with the green tinge with using daylight film, or the orange yellowy thing that you got with tungsten lighting, you could either change the colour bias and or just what I did to get rid of that with transparency film was overexpose slightly, so it came out more white rather than the yellow or green.
Particularly you notice with night photography, especially if you're using long exposures like 5 seconds or something, in the old days with colour film, quite often the colours would be shifted because there was something called reciprocity failure. Half...
And I was using that to my advantage somewhat, but I was taking 2 to 4 minute exposures at, say, f8, that sort of thing.
What were you photographing by moonlight or something?
No. Oh, street lights. Underneath artificial light. And, it lended itself to also standing in front with a flash gun. And so long as you didn't stand between the flash gun and the camera, you wouldn't get this shadow come out. A couple of times I deliberately exposed the plate, as we called it, and then ran and stood for half the exposure in one spot and then moved away, so it looked like a ghost. I purposely did that, but it used to be funny to put the transparencies up on the big screen and explain to people that, see why that bogey is all lit up? Well, I flashed that 3 times with the flash gun, and you wouldn't know that I'd ever walked into the frame, because as long as you didn't stand still, you weren't going to come out the exposure. That used to be fun. No, digital photography got rid of all that stuff because
digital photography has revolutionised low light work.
Oh yeah, well, the longest I think I ever used to take were 2-second exposures in, say, street scenes. But again, I could choose the colour bias I wanted to get rid of the tungsten colour, for example.
One of the things that you would never see on old movie film, generally not see it unless there was a very skillful photographer with a very fast lens, was decent moving pictures of aurora displays. And today it is so easy. The average SLR, good SLR, will take terrific photos of aurora, particularly if you set it to a time exposure of 10 or 15 seconds or thereabouts per shot.
Yeah, you're right. Even hand-holding my camera, hand-holding my eau de cologne, I was seeing aurora colours that the eye wouldn't pick up.
Yeah.
So it was even an improvement. Well, I guess not unusual because we look at stars, for example, and they're all whitish, greyish points of light. But film certainly brings out the various colours related to temperature. You know, like the blues being the higher temperatures and the yellows down to oranges being the cooler ones.
Yeah, when I got my new Sony camera about 4 years ago, well, more than that, 5 years ago, this is a still point-and-shoot handheld. It's not an SLR, it hasn't got a removable lens, but I wanted something small that I could always sling over my neck and have it always with me to do opportunistic shooting. Like if I saw some accident going on or if somebody threatened me, I could whip the thing out and take a photograph of the miscreant. And I've got quite a few rather good photos that way. I didn't want a big clunky SLR with removable lenses because they're too heavy and they're too bulky. And you can do so well now with point-shoot cameras, but they do cost a few $100, sometimes a couple of thou. Anyway, I got the thing home and I set it up on a tripod and took a 15-second exposure of myself in the backyard. That sounds funny. No, I didn't do it naked, but in under a full moon. And unlike film photography, where you could tell that it was shot at night, all the colours were reproduced exactly as you would during the day. And of course you could see all sorts of things at night that you couldn't see with the naked eye through the camera. So very impressed with that. And it's another thing that interests me is that sometimes people who are not really in the know about digital photography boast about how many pixels their camera has and how big the files are, not realizing that if you have more than the optimum number of pixels, and you can have more than the optimum, because as you increase the number of pixels, the well size decreases, the spot size decreases to microscopic degrees, so that the number of photons that those very high definition image plates pick up is much more limited than you get with a smaller number of pixels. So the smaller number of pixels quite often will be better in poor light. So people who boast just about the pixel size, or sorry, the pixel number of their camera, don't really know the full story. I was discussing this with KA70EI, Clint Turner, over in Salt Lake City, and he was saying that, I think he said that at the time we talked, which is about 2 years ago, that 16 megapixels appeared, according to general consensus, to be about the optimum of manufacturing at that time. It might have changed since. There may be new techniques that they've used to overcome some of the problems, but somehow I doubt it. I think if you keep on increasing the number of pixels without increasing the image size, there's got to be a limit where you don't actually pick up enough photons to get a noise-free image.
Good old photon torpedoes, a la Star Trek. In the noughties, I used to submit images to Newsrail, a train crank magazine.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And Barry Eady, was the editor or one of the head honchos there, and since I worked with him, it was a simple matter of just handing him about 30 photos and he'd pick out the ones he wanted. I actually made a couple of front and back covers, which was rather nice, but only thing I remember is that the photos needed to be 4 meg minimum. I don't remember there ever specifying the maximum size or anything like that, but then again, the cameras at that time probably wouldn't have, we're talking about the mid-noughties, probably wouldn't have been all that grand anyway. I think an 8 meg camera was just about as good as you could get without it being a professional job.
Yeah, they've gone up and up in sizes. So has, in the early days of digital photography, the image area was much less than a 35mm film frame. Now the fashion is for an image sensor that's the same size as a 35mm film frame, about 24 millimeters by 36 millimeters. And the trouble is that producing a blemish-free image sensor of that large size, frequently in terms of manufacturing, involves a lot of reject image sensors, and they can be quite costly. So I tend to take cameras that are somewhat larger than the very small size used by point shoot, but smaller than the full 24 by 36. You can buy the 24 by 36, but the trouble is the lenses for that image size start to become pretty big and bulky and heavy. So there's a trade-off. The way I see it, there would be no point in me having a big bulky SLR because I simply wouldn't take it out often enough to get the pictures I want. If you have something on you all the time, it tends to be, you know, oh, there's something worth photographing. Bang, done. A lot of people nowadays are using their mobile phones, as you say, and some of the more expensive mobile phones can do a very good job of it. But they're incredibly expensive, as you probably realise.
Well, I miss being able to throw in a bit of expertise that you learned the hard way through taking lousy images. But well, no, there was a bit more skill involved in the good old days, of course. I liked being able to control the depth of field, which for a print, unless you were blowing up to some great mammoth proportions, didn't really matter so much. But with the transparency, where you could project the image on a screen and feel like you could walk into the image,
yes,
you know, the depth of field was marvellous, you know, to control that. And a lot of portrait takers let themselves down because you'll see a part of the person is perfectly in focus and other parts that you prefer to see are not quite so. Anyway,
better get off that subject. You know where that's drifting.
Well, no, actually, I
naked
had
women.
Purer thoughts than you probably imagine. But yeah, I take your point. I might be shifting there. I took a digital. I'd only just been introduced to digital photography before I went to America for the first time, and I took transparency film that was different to what I normally did because Kodak, as I said, had just stopped making K64, so I had some Fuji 100, and you wouldn't think one f-stop would make a hell of a lot of difference, but I made quite a few errors in my exposures for the time shots. I was very grateful that I had the digital camera because, as I said, most of my slide shots were underexposed or maybe slightly over. Sometimes I can't remember it, but the digital saved the day.
Was the Fuji film notably more grainy?
Well, I couldn't tell the difference between 64 and 100, no, but
what I noticed was going to
bias that I didn't like.
With Fuji, what I noticed was a green bias, unlike the red-blue bias that Kodachrome had.
Yes. Oh, and Ektachrome, another one of the that lasted a bit longer. Yeah, that had a distinctly blue bias.
That's so okay. It faded to pink, so you have
it
a
made
choice.
The old blue and yellow, the original VR livery for the locomotives look all right, although they were usually a dirty sort of a matte blue anyhow.
From what I remember, because all photographic colour film uses colour synthesis with three primaries, there are certain colours that are difficult to reproduce realistically, and with Kodachrome I think the colour was yellow. There were certain yellows that the Kodachrome was not well suited to reproducing.
I once used 200 professional, and that that really let me down, but it might have been good for skin tones or something for portraits, but it wasn't much good for railway photography, as I recall. Now, I tried some K25 one time as well, and for moving pictures, no. It had to be a bright sunny day, otherwise you just wouldn't get the shutter speed to enable a sharp image of something that was moving.
Yeah, I've only shot Kodachrome movie in 16mm a couple of times a very long time ago. 1979 would have been the last occasion, I think, but I do have some Kodachrome that I shot around the streets of Melbourne in the 1970s, and now it's historically interesting, particularly the stuff I took down near the art centre, where the art centre was surrounded by building hoardings for most of that decade. And also I took a travelling shot on 16mm going in a tram up Burke Street, and you see that hi-fi shop that had the enlarged model of a reel-to-reel tape recorder on the front. I forget the name of it. Hi-Fi. JB Hi-Fi, was it? I'm not quite sure. The original JB Hi-Fi, I think. Sorry, Harry?
Douglas Hi-Fi with the big reels out the front.
That's the one. Yeah, up the hill a bit.
Front.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to get that one on YouTube as well. Probably people will be interested in that. Anyway, yes, photography. Most of the photographs that I took actually were black and white because I could process them myself and buy the film, 35mm film, in 100-foot rolls and then cut off enough to fit in a canister for 36 or more shots, and then develop and print the stuff at absolute minimal cost, whereas colour you'd have to send away to professional processing, and it cost considerably more if you were doing your own processing in black and white. And I was never game to process colour. I know a few of my friends did Chrome, which you would have to reproduce from positive transparencies from memory. But the chemicals were rather nasty, and I know a number of people who got quite sick using them, particularly if they dipped their hands inadvertently in the caustic chemicals. Glad to see the last of that.
Getting back to Aurora, have you ever seen a classic Aurora?
Yes. I did a hike with Winston Nichols, VK3AML, in 1979, around about August, September, at the height of the 1979 sunspot maximum. And one of the nights we were hiking from, how can I describe this, from the Mount McCall Road, which runs south from Linda on the west coast of Tasmania. We were hiking from there into an old ghost town, a ghost port near the mouth of the Gordon River called Pillinger, otherwise known as Kelly Basin. And we camped at Kelly Basin, and the clouds parted at one point, and instead of seeing a black sky, there was a bright red sky behind it, and we saw the whole, the curtains moving slowly.
So it does move around.
Oh yeah, it's slow. It might move quicker in the northern hemisphere, and I've seen some videos on YouTube that imply that the curtains are moving around quite quickly. But whether they're sped up,
I'm wondering about.
Whether they're sped up, I don't know. But what I saw was moving slowly. You could perceptibly see it moving, but it was not, flashing about all over the place. And I presume that has to do with the speed of the solar wind that induces it in the first place.
Yeah, well, the first two times, or the most obvious times that I've seen Aurora, I didn't know what I was looking at.
Mm-hmm.
The first time of all things, I was about 30 k's north of Yarrawonga, and there was a red sky to the south, and I naturally assumed it was some sort of pollution that was making the lights of Yarrawonga into, colours for 15, 20 degrees above the horizon. And later on, I found out that there'd been Aurora the second time, and both of those were in 2003. I walked out just after dark outside my front door, which faced south, and the sky was a really real bright green.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh my goodness, there's some awful pollution. Again, I had no idea what I was looking at. It was only the next day when the media announced it was Aurora. Now, both of those were just colours that didn't move. And yes, I've seen all the footage of people up the top of Norway and all that where it appears to dance around. And I've always wondered, is that the sped up? What's the name for it? Is it pixelation? No. There's a name for, yeah.
I wasn't aware.
But anyway, I'd forgotten that you, in living in VK7 for so long, you were bound to have seen more aurora. So
done some travelling in VK7, also the South Island of New Zealand. So
yes.
I've been in places which tend to see it a bit more.
Yeah.
But there have been some spectacular displays in the last couple of years, and for one of them, there was a prediction, an ionospheric prediction that came up in its favour. And Steve 3SL, who has 5 kids, I think only one is off his hands at the moment, drove the kids down to, I think, Cape Shank, so he could look out across Bass Strait. And apparently he saw an absolutely spectacular display of it from Cape Shank, because looking out across Bass Strait, totally black, and an ideal spot to do it. Although the Cape Shank lighthouse is there, you only get the beam about once every 30 seconds, so, you know, you could differentiate the two fairly easily. But it is possible to see it from Victoria on occasions. I have heard it going as far north as Sydney, but I don't think it's seen very much up that way at all. The further south you are, particularly as you get to 40 degrees or thereabouts, you start to see a lot more of it.
Big Carrington event, we were supposed to have had aurora near or on the equator, but who would know? Steve ZH, his daughter took a photo from their place with that big one that we had, it's sometime in 2024 now. That was a beautiful photograph.
Okay.
But I've not seen
so
anything.
They're sufficiently far out that they get a darker sky, do they? Or
Well, it's certainly the photo wants for nothing. It's really, really good. I wish I'd known what I was looking at in 2003 when I saw that green sky, because it was green all the way to 45 to 50 degrees above the horizon.
Yeah, the Astronomical Society of Victoria was after sites that had dark sky, in inverted commas, for a long time, and it was possible to pick parts of Melbourne, particularly in the past, that were notable for darker skies than most of the suburbs. For instance, they had, which I can talk about now because it's no longer there, the ASV had a planetary observatory in Para Street, Box Hill, just immediately south of Wattle Park, on the Burwood Highway side of Wattle Park. And there, back in the 70s, you had the playing fields of Wattle Park High School on one side, you had Wattle Park on the other side, no light, and you had PLC, which had much smaller buildings and much less lighting than it has now. So that the density of street lighting there was significantly less than most of the eastern suburbs. But since then, Wattle Park High School was Kenneted in the Kennet years, and I think they've moved the observatory to either Harcourt or Heathcote. I think it's Heathcote, up in central northern Victoria, where they can be assured of dark skies all the time.
On astronomical events, and one that didn't even need a dark sky was Comet McNaught in early 2006.
Yeah.
That was a beauty. I did go down to Portsea Back Beach to look at it, and it turned out that it wasn't all that much more impressive than seeing it here from the suburbs. But some of my best photos I took, of all things, were right in smack bang in the middle of the city. Finishing work one night about 9 p.m, I took my digital camera down next to, what's it called this week? It was originally called Colonial Stadium, then it became Telstra Dome, Etihad Stadium, I don't know what it is now, but right next to that, it's still sort of upstairs, what used to be the old East Yard when the railways still ran freight. Well, no, they run freight, but totally different to how it used to be. So it's, the Comet McNaught's about 15, 20 degrees above the horizon, with all the city lights and buildings in the shot, and yet still clearly visible.
I seem to remember that was a pretty impressive sight, particularly just near sunset, down near the western horizon.
It's a southwest, yeah. It's the best comet I've ever seen. Now, Halley's was a disappointment because I saw that in April.
Oh, it was just a little white
a fuzzy blob. Yeah, not much bigger than M6 and 7 at the tail of the Scorpion. And the only way I knew that it wasn't a globular cluster or something else is because it moved night
I believe
by night.
that the people that saw it when it was a very early morning object got a better view, but I never saw it then. I saw it at night and was not particularly impressed.
Yeah, I only looked the once. I was on 4 a.m. starts or something like that, and I couldn't see it while I was walking to work, and I kept saying, it's going to be closer and a better view when it comes out the other side of the sun in April, so I'll wait until April.
Now,
and it turns out it was I missed most of the spectacle. But Hyakutake wasn't a bad comet.
Don't know of that one. That was earlier, wasn't it, I think?
Yeah, in the 90s.
Okay. No, I don't think I saw it. Does that mean that when you were working on the railways, you were living on Mount Dandenong?
No. I was in the western suburbs.
Oh, okay. I was about to say a daily commute at 4 a.m. from Mount Dandenong must have been the pits.
Oh, well, one thing we used to have, which got sold off for a pay rise and improvement in the superannuation and all that, we used to have taxis that ran the Suburbans into the city. But the furthest east the taxis would run was from Ringwood. So if I was, say, starting at 3 a.m. In the depot in town, I only had to get myself to Ringwood. The taxis would pick us up and run us in. But of course that finished. So eventually, but that's right. By then I already had a job out at Belgrave. But going back to, I was still on the loco at Dynon when Halley's Comet was in, because that was 85, 86. So April 86 was meant to be the best time to see it, but the tail was pointing directly away from us, which is why you just got the fuzzy blob.
Right.
But and if it not for the fact that it moved night by night, I wouldn't have known what I was looking at anyhow. It changed position slightly.
Yes.
I did. I used a 25 power with a 60 power eyepiece. I had a spotting telescope that I remember driving out into the back blocks and focusing it on a star, and the star started to turn oval, and I thought, oh goodness, there's something wrong with the lens. The star was getting particularly yellow as well, and when I finally got full resolution, I'd actually zeroed in on Saturn without realising it, so that ended up being a bigger thrill seeing that for the first time.
What was that?
Halley's.
It was Halley's Comet. Okay.
Well, I was doing that when I was looking for Halley's Comet, but as I said, the real, looking at it 25 or 60 power was, it just made the fuzzy blob look bigger.
Yeah.
You get to see a tail, whereas and after that,
considering all the publicity they had, people talking about the tail of the comet is half the width of the sky, and all the things we're expecting. Talk about a fizzer.
Yes, I was expecting something grand like that too, but still, because I know I spent long enough looking forward to it, and not going to be around for the next one. Now, I've heard two distinct versions of what the next one's going to be like. One version said that it would be further away from us, therefore would be a smaller image than this time, and another prediction said that it would be better. So, but anyway,
I think it's best to go to some astronomical ephemeris and work it out from there, or ask somebody who's qualified at Melbourne Observatory or something like that.
Anyway, the time to have seen Halley's Comet would have been in 1066. Ooh.
Oh, wasn't it knitted into the Bayeux tapestry or something?
Yeah. Supposedly the sign that poor old Harold Godwinson was going to cop it. I believe it's apocryphal that he got the arrow in the eye. I'm not too sure, but...
well, that's what they show on the Bayeux Tapestry, but whether it happened in reality or not is another thing.
He obviously didn't make it. That's the most important thing.
The friends of ours, my late friend Felicity Martin, who was a textile conservator, actually went over to Belgium, is it? And had a look at the Bayeux Tapestry, and she said it's what we see of it reproduced in books are just little sections, but the whole thing is something like 80 feet long. It's incredible.
Anyway, as for astronomical objects, I think Comet McNaught has done it for me. I've seen something that looked pretty cool, and so if the truth be known, I would rather see a slam bam, thank you ma'am, aurora. That would, because then I can poke my 2 and 6 metre beams to the south and try and work some auroral propagation at the same time, knowing that HF will be totally useless. And I remember
I don't know much about auroral propagation on VHF. Does it get far?
Well, I've worked VK4 on 6 metres by pointing the beam south. Yeah, I've not had the luck on 2 metres, but others have.
Yeah.
And that might just be... actually, one night, by mistake, I was pointing my beam north and didn't realise my mistake until I wanted to back it down. I remember a couple of people who were big into the dark side saying that when we had that last big storm that in 2024 that I was referring to, that even the dark side had absolutely nothing on any of the bands. It really fixed us up for a couple of days.
Yeah, I noticed that we're getting close to midnight. Perhaps I'd better put out a call to see if anybody else would like to call in on 439-225 before we close. Are there any others apart from maybe you, Harry, HFX? Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here, but I have nothing to say, so I'll stand by.
No worries, Harry. Going, just for your interest, going through scans of my old photographs, I have found a few photographs taken at 3CR in the studio on opening day at the opening program with the Panthers, Bevan Ramsden at the microphone, Das Cassidy acting as MC, and my old friend Mangan Ryan as panel operator. It's all taken in Studio 1 Armidale, but I have a lot more photos from Cromwell Street. So I'm thinking of throwing together a bit of a video, partly critical of the way the station has drifted, although you always need a safety valve for those who feel the need to blow off steam or feel the need to be heard, and 3CR certainly provides that. It's just that quite often those that shout the loudest get the most airplay, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm finding more and more images that I'd forgotten that I had on old terabyte drives. It's amazing what turns up when you start doing searches. Okay, all the best to you, Harry. And Peter, any final words? It's just on midnight now.
You there, Chris?
Yes, Harry.
Yeah, I was going to say that's very interesting with all those photos. I also have a lot of photos from Cromwell Street when Studio 3 was being built and various others. But there's something really weird. I have sent emails in relation to this 50th anniversary that's coming up, and I have made phone calls and left messages. I have sent emails saying that I have a lot of photographs and would they be interested for this anniversary display thing that they are doing at the Collingwood Town Hall. And no one has got back to me, and it's interesting. You have all these photos. Do you happen to know whether any of them were in that book that they published for the 40th anniversary?
God, no. I
I've
haven't.
forgotten what it's called now, but I've got a copy somewhere around here. Have you got a copy?
I have seen it, and I felt that it glossed over the problem so greatly that I regard it as a work of semi-fiction or incomplete truth.
Quite right. Quite right, yes. There are a lot of things missing out of that book.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, yeah, well, I contacted them for that too as well, but, you know, I don't know what these people are doing, because, of course, photographs and things like that are very important when you have these sort of anniversaries. But anyway, if anybody contacts me, I will mention the photos you have.
Yes. There would be about a dozen from Armadale and something like 40 from Cromwell Street.
Wow, yeah. Okay, I'll keep it in mind. Anyway, I'm back on the side, and interesting hearing you talk about photography and sensors and things like that. I have 2 Canons, mirrorless now, with 32 megapixel sensors, which was the sensor that they had in the EOS 5D, which to a certain extent is one of the best sensors that Canon actually used. After that, of course, they went to 45 in the R5. But it allows a lot of cropping, which is really good. I mean, you know, 32 for me is very adequate for what I do.
Yeah, look, I don't think that many people want really extreme low light performance, but of course there is a trade-off between the number of pixels. Given a constant sensor size, there is a trade-off between the number of pixels and the amount of sensitivity at low light levels. Sorry, have I said something wrong?
Yeah, the amount of detail you can get with some of those Sony cameras, though, is quite incredible when they push it up to 65 megapixels. I've seen photos, and I don't reckon that I could get anything with that kind of detail with my cameras. But, you know, anyway, sometimes it's a matter of opinion. Depends on what you're doing with the photos. Some people, of course, blow them up to huge sizes. So you need a lot of detail there. Anyway, as I said, back on the side, let you guys wrap it up or whatever you want to do.
No
I'm working on photographs right now, sorting through lots of photographs, picking out for ones that are going to get published. Thank you. Good night.
Okay, all the best, Harry. We'll catch you down the track. Peter, any final words?
Well, thank you for providing the crossband. Good night, Harry. The Titanic broadcast, as I said, was really nice. My favourite book when I was in Form 2 in secondary school was Walter Lord's A Night to Remember.
Oh, yes.
It was well worn by the time I finished, because I think I read it through 2 or 3 times. But there was a chapter that said God himself could not sink this ship, and that apparently was a survivor reported to him that they'd heard somebody on the docks at Belfast say that that had come across, because the watertight doors were going to be the answer to everything, weren't they? Yeek. Anyway, was there anything else for tonight? Oh, given that it's extremely blowy at the moment, I may not be putting up an antenna in the daylight, so I may not have any HF to report about. I hope that's not the case, but may well be so. So feel free to get on 40 and give me something to listen to a report thereof. But
Okay.
anyway, just, have a good day today, and look forward to catching up later. VK3AML in the group. This has been VK3ACZ. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, Pete. Well, I might close. An old friend of mine was Lionel, VK3NM, who actually was the responsible for twisting my arm to get the full license after many years of thinking about it. And I actually recorded the last time he was on 160 metres. He was a 160 metre fanatic. So I'll close with playing Lionel, his last transmission, 22nd of July 2011. He died 2 weeks later at the start of August 2011. Hang on.
VK3AM. Okay, can you, if you can you do me a copy? I would like to watch that. Yeah, well, good morning all. My voice is probably still not quite 100%. I'm definitely not 100%. It's bearable because where I am, where my pad is very, very cold. It's in the, shade of the pine trees. I'm going to see the doctor at 3 o'clock. Well, there's a few issues. I think a few things need to be sorted out, but I think I'm getting over it. I had what I'll call the soft poo syndrome. Well, it doesn't to be better. That's getting better. But I went through about 4 rolls of toilet paper in a day. So, but I won't go into the details. Too much information. But it's just been so cold. In fact, I reckon, this year the winter is just bitterly cold. I haven't been able to do my skill crossing supervisor. I've got to give the City of Knox a medical certificate to try and work out how long I am going to be off. So that's going to be part of my discussion with the doctor today. In the future winters, what I am going to do, I'm even saving up now. I am going to spend, well, if I'm still doing skill crossing supervising in 12 months' time, during the skill holidays, or one of the skill holidays, I'm going to head off to Singapore or Bangkok or one of those places. If I'm not doing any work, I will probably try and stay away for a little bit longer. And another part of the winter next year, I've decided I'm going to make arrangements to stay with a friend of mine up in Maryborough, Queensland. So from now on, after this winter, I'm going to try and reduce my stay in the Melbourne winter as much as I can until, however, I have put in for a government housing, a flat, which would be quite easy to heat up. So that's my plans anyway. Otherwise, I suppose I'm going to be a beach bum, up at near the Cape York Peninsula. So, but anyway, we'll have to sort of see what happens. But by God, I don't know how you guys, I don't know what you guys thought of this winter, but it was a bugger. And we've still got more to come, unfortunately. Okay. I'm not feeling too bad today, but still I'm not warm. But at least it's bearable to come to the 706 anyway. Righto. I'm not too sure who I put it to, So whoever to take, please take it, VK3AML. Yes.
And that was the last time Lionel 3M, dear old Lionel, appeared on the coffee break session. That was recorded on the 22nd of July 2011, almost exactly 15 years ago. I'm sure those who are listening miss dear old Lionel with all his faults, his likings of neenish tarts mixed with the consumption of cigarettes, which of course took him out, poor guy. He died at age 61, as so many people who get into the toxic weed do. As just a final gesture, this one is purely for VK3VJS, and I hope I don't offend any Jewish people listening, but my friend Jeff has some German background, and one thing we agree with is that although the Nazi regime was absolutely dreadful and evil in most respects, they had some damn good rousing music. So I managed to find, Jeff, if you're listening, the very first recording of this famous piece, and I'll give you only one verse because I dare not play more. VK3 Alpha Mike Lima testing.
Die Fahne hoch, die Reihen fest geschlossen, SA marschiert mit ruhig festem Schritt. Kameraden, die Front und Reaktion erschossen, marschieren im Geist in unseren Reihen mit. Kameraden, die Front und Reaktion erschossen, marschieren im Geist in unseren Reihen mit.
Yes, very rousing music. Pity about the shit regime behind it. Anyway, VK3AML is now concluding on 147,475 until this time, well, until 11 a.m, 10:30 p.m, I should say, today, that is Friday. And we'll now drop off 147,475. Listen briefly on 2 meters before pulling the big switch completely. Thanks for listening, folks.